Welcome to the Gospel Road, and we're going to look at Jonah chapter 1. And we all remember the story of Jonah and the whale, right? Jonah and the big fish. Well, this will be the first chapter in that. Now, the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, "Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and call out against it, for their evil has come up before me." But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa, found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it, to go with them to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord. But the Lord hurled a great wind upon the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship threatened to break up. Then the mariners were afraid, and each cried out to his God. And they hurled the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to lighten it for them. But Jonah had gone down into the inner part of the ship and had lain down and was fast asleep. So the captain came and said to him, "What do you mean, you sleeper? Arise, call out to your God. Perhaps the God will give us a thought to us, that we may not perish." And they said one to another, "Come, let us cast lots, that we may know on whose account this evil has come upon us." So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. They then said to him, "Tell us on whose account this evil has come to us. What is your occupation? Where do you come from? What is your country? And what people are you?" And he said to him, "I am Hebrew. I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." Then the men were exceedingly afraid and said to him, "What is it that you have done?" For the men knew that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them. Then he said to them, "What shall we do to you, that the sea may quiet down for us?" For the sea grew more and more tempestuous. He said to them, "Pick me up and hurl me into the sea. Then the sea will quiet down for you. For I know it is because of me that this great tempest has come upon you." Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to get back to dry land, but they could not, for the sea grew more and more tempestuous against them. Therefore they called out to the Lord, "O Lord, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not on us innocent blood for you. O Lord, have done as it pleased." So they picked up Jonah and hurled him into the sea, and the sea ceased for its raging. Then the man feared the Lord exceedingly, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. And the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Jonah chapter 1. That is what we looked at there. God told Jonah what to do. And basically Jonah said no. In fact, not only did Jonah say no, Jonah ran. By running, God then created the storm, which made it impossible to sail and make it to their destination. So think about that. How can you take the story of Jonah and apply it to you? I know I think about it, and my best way to compare is, for years, God has really put in some things onto my heart. Things that I believe I need to do. And the reason why I think they are coming from God is because they've been there for so long. And the longer I do not follow the desire of my heart, it is eating at me more and more. A perfect example is the podcast that I'm doing here. And I do my best to try and keep on this about once a week, which I did good for the longest time. And then life kind of got in the way, things got busy, and then I wasn't doing it for a while, and then I kind of would hit it off and on. Well, the weeks that I didn't do the podcast, it really bothered me. I mean, really, it just was eating at me because I wasn't getting it done. And that even goes with the one tonight, because I kind of had a lot going on, didn't have a lot of time to get things done, and I got home, and I'm like, I need to do this. So, for me, it's kind of a harsh comparison, because most people can look at this and go, but it was a storm and it was a whale, and they threw Jonah into the water, and then the fish swallowed Jonah. So you're saying that your feelings are a whale? Well, they're allegories, they're stories. And out of these stories, you have to be able to understand what it's saying to you, what God is trying to reveal to you through what happened in their lives. So for Jonah, the example, God said, go to Nineveh. This is what I want you to do. Jonah said, not going to happen. I'm heading to Tarshish. Didn't work. So for me, the storm is the desire of my heart eating at me, bothering me, saying, you're not doing this. You're not getting this done. So his storm is the ship not getting to the destination it needs to get to, and then, of course, him needing to be thrown overboard to calm the storm. So what is it that God is laying on your heart? What is it that God is wanting you to do? You know, how many times do we sit there and we keep asking God, what is it that we need to do? What is it that you are planning for us? And we keep asking and 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 asking. What if he's already given you the answer? See, the Bible tells us that God is going to give us the desires of our heart. When we're following God, we're working on that relationship, that one-on-one relationship with God. Then we are going to think like God. We're going to think like Christ. We're not God, of course. We're not Christ. We're far from it. But we're going to be righteous. We're going to be Christ-like, because that's our goal. We want to be like a Christ. We cannot be Christ. We cannot be God. But we can change the way we think, evolve our mind to think like God, to think like Christ. So then the desire of your heart is the desire that God has for you. So then your purpose becomes your desire. So that becomes the purpose, the plan God has for you in His kingdom. God gives you the desire of your heart. So one of them for me, the podcast. That's one. I don't do it, and it bothers me. Two, a networking group that I started. Because that's one thing that we don't really have a lot of, are networking groups for like-minded Christians, believers, spiritual. But I wasn't looking at a networking group that was just going to be another church service. Because to me, a networking group, they shouldn't be called a networking group. They need to be called a relationship group. Because remember, the Bible is talking about love and a relationship. It's that relationship with God, that one-on-one relationship that we have with Him. Because it's His desire that we love Him and that we are friends. We have that relationship. So it's not really a networking group, it's a relationship group, because not only are we growing our relationship with God, we need to be growing our relationship with one another. So that's another one. A third thing that God has laid on my heart for years was a support group for pastors. You know, how many times do we sit there and we're looking at our pastor at the pulpit? He's, with all of his heart giving us the information and encouraging us, inspiring us, lifting us up and leading us, showing us at least what the Bible is sharing with him. And then we, of course, then go read and then get with the Bible. But it's that partnership of working together, of him motivating you to do what God wants you to do. But who's there for the pastor when he needs something, when he's in need? That's 3. Then, of course, there was 4, which is a book that I'm working on right now. Again, as I say, just like with my DJ business that I do, I'm not the cheapest, I'm not the most expensive, I'm, kind of there in the middle. Again, I have had a life that's not been the worst, it's not been the best. It's just kind of there. But, we all have things that we can use to relate to one another, to help one another, to pull someone through, to motivate them when they need to get to that next step, to pull them along and build that relationship with them. So those are the things that are really, the storm isn't outside or around me. For me, the storm is inside. The storm is in my heart. And God is stirring that up and saying, look, here's what I want you to do. Why aren't you doing it? You have the knowledge. You have the ability. You have the talent. Why are you not doing this? So it's just there. It keeps eating and eating and eating and eating. And finally, I'm like, fine. And that's the way we think sometimes. Look at Jonah. God says do this. He's like, no, thank you. And that's the way we are. God says do this. And we're like, no. And then finally, he's saying do it. And we're saying no. And he's saying yes. And we say no. And he says yes. We say no. And finally, we're like, fine. Of course, what's funny, we say fine. We do it. And it brings happiness, joy, satisfaction. We might end up doing it grudgingly. For me, I'm thinking, man, I don't have time for this, or I'm tired. I just want to go to bed. But I'm thinking, no, I got to do this. This is what I need to do. This is what needs to be done. And when it's done, I feel fantastic. What is it that God is wanting you to do? What's the desire He has put in your heart? What is your position in His kingdom to help it grow? Jonah 1, as I say every week, every podcast, read it. What does God say to you in the reading? Because it doesn't matter what He says to me. I read it. This is what God says to me. I share it with you. But it's your relationship with God. What is God telling you? Because just because God's telling me doesn't mean that's what he's telling you. Because you know what? We're different. We have different talents. We understand different things. So what is it that God is wanting you to do for his kingdom? What can you do for him? Jonah chapter 1. Read that this week. Until next time, have a great day. God bless. Thanks for listening to The Gospel Road.